Hello, Psychology of Learning students. So we are in week 4, chapter 4, and this is going to be the second and last video covering this chapter. In fact, this is the last video for the entire first unit. So next week, week 5, you'll take your first exam covering chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's get to the last lesson of this chapter. I'm going to share the screen of the PowerPoint slides. Remember, these PowerPoint slides are available to you in your course content in the folder for chapter 4. In the last video, I talked about fear, prejudice, and the paraphilias. This video, I'm going to talk about drug addiction, advertising, and healthcare. Okay, so let's begin with drug addiction. And if you know anyone who's addicted or have a family member who's addicted, you know how much addiction, drug addiction can wreak havoc on the life satisfaction of the person who's the drug addict and all the people who love him or her. If you're an employer, you know how much of a problem it can be, how many hours you lose to sick time, and how much less productive your organization is due to drug addiction. So it's a real problem. And classical conditioning may help to explain pieces of it and may help us to know ways to make people suffer less. One of the problems that we have when we talk about drug addiction is that drug abuse, we don't have a shared understanding of the fundamental nature of the behavior involved. So there's a group of people who believe that drug addiction is a result of a character flaw. And to some extent, if you look at the way we punish drug abusers, we sort of act as though they're choosing this and that they're doing it wrong, and we're going to punish them. We're going to send them to prison for it. Your book will point out that to some extent that's circular logic. Why is the person a drug addict? Well, because they have this character flaw. How do you know they have a character flaw? Well, because they're a drug addict. So it's not the best explanation. We certainly have tons of information out there that suggests, well, more than just suggests, it's hard to argue against this, that drug abuse is a brain disease. Addicts' brains look different than non-addicts' brains. Now, it is true that some drugs affect the brain, but the brain differences go beyond the damage or the effect of what the drug has done. So there's it's hard to, you can't ignore the fact that drug abuse is a brain disease. However, the brain explanation can't explain all of the addictive behavior. It seems like there's other things going on too. And so classical conditioning might be an area that, or a way that could account for some of the findings. So before we get into this, I need to make sure you understand what these 3 different terms mean, what they are, so that we can understand the effect classical conditioning, or how classical conditioning can account for some of these findings. So one thing is tolerance. So after repeated drug use, most people will need more of the same drug in order to get the same high. And by high, I mean the pleasurable experiences from taking the drug. If taking the drug didn't lead to pleasurable experiences, the person wouldn't have kept taking it. So, but people will become tolerant to the drug. They'll have tolerance, meaning that they'll need more of the drug to get to the same level of high. Or if they keep taking the same level of the drug, they no longer get that high. So we call that tolerance. Now, why would that happen? If it's a brain disease, why would you need more of the drug to lead to the same effect? What could be going on there? And I bet you could come up, like I bet right now you're thinking about, well, maybe the brain does this, maybe the brain does that. Okay. Another thing is withdrawal. So after someone is addicted to a drug, if they stop taking the drug, nearly all the time they'll have strong cravings to take the drug, and also a list of symptoms that are really uncomfortable. So for example, if people who are addicted to nicotine from smoking cigarettes, if they stop taking nicotine, their body will go into withdrawal, and the withdrawal symptoms include heightened anxiety, palm sweating, mouth dry, heart rate going up. They become irritable, like they seem very anxious. Now, to get rid of that withdrawal symptom, all they need to do is have more nicotine. If they take more nicotine, then the withdrawal symptoms go away and they'll feel like they're back to quote unquote normal. That now, not the normal that they were before they were addicted to the nicotine, but this new normal. And oftentimes I've heard smokers say, smoking calms me down. Well, nicotine is a stimulant, so it's not calming you down. What's probably happening is you're addicted to the nicotine. And so when you stop smoking and you haven't smoked in a little bit, then your body's withdrawing from the nicotine, and the withdrawal looks like anxiety. So then when you smoke and those withdrawal symptoms go away, it looks as though you're now less anxious, because you are less anxious. But it's not that it calms you down, it's that the withdrawal symptoms are going away. The other word that we're going to use is called relapse. So relapse is after someone's addicted, if then they go into extinction. So they're addicted and now they've been off the drugs for a really long time, an extended period of time. So long they've been off the drugs that the withdrawal symptoms have gone away. So sometimes people will like not even touch something that they were addicted to for a year or 2 years. We even heard alcoholics say, I didn't touch the stuff for 12 years, more than a decade. But then they'll all of a sudden go back to using the drug. They'll be in a certain situation, the craving will become so strong that they go back to using the drug. And it almost defies logic, because someone's like, look at how much better your life was the last 12 years. Remember how horrible it was when you were using and how great it is now. But something happened, some situation they got into, something happened where their craving was so strong that it almost defied reason. And they went back to using the drug. We call that relapse. This tolerance, withdrawal, and relapse might be able to be explained through classical conditioning if we think of classical conditioning this way. So if we think of the drug as the unconditioned stimulus, so you don't need to be trained or learn this in any way. If you take that drug, you're going to automatically have the unconditioned response. So the person takes the marijuana, smokes marijuana, and they get high. And for them, it's a pleasurable experience. And you didn't have to learn anything there. Yes, you are. But every time that they get high, let's say something is paired with it. So let's say there's certain people they tend to get high with. So they see these people, they get high from the drug. Also, some of the paraphernalia with the drug, maybe the container that it comes in, or the furniture that they usually sit in when they're doing it, or the music that's playing, or the odor of the drug. Any of these things could be associated with the drug. I know one of my friends, her husband smokes, and she does not allow smoke in her house. So he has to go into the garage whenever he smokes. And so for him, the garage could be the conditioned stimulus. Anything that is associated with the drug leading to the unconditioned response. Now, to use classical conditioning to explain some of these phenomena, our conditioned response is not going to look exactly like the unconditioned response. So our unconditioned response is getting high from the drug. But maybe the conditioned response are some physiological changes because your body is preparing for the drug to happen. So if like the body knows marijuana is coming in, maybe it's doing some things to suppress the effect of the marijuana. And so the CS, if it's just there alone, that's what you'll see, is the CR will happen, even though the drug's not there. So let's explain some of these. Let's look at how this would account for tolerance. So if the CR suppresses the effect of the drug, then if you take the US, the same amount of the drug you're used to taking, and your body, it has this effect of suppressing the effect of that drug, then you're not going to get as high as you would. You're going to need more of that drug for that to happen. Is that going to make sense? Then look how this might be able to account for withdrawal symptoms. If the CS is presented without the drug, maybe the body's way of suppressing the, like preparing for this drug, suppressing the body's response to the drug, but the drug never comes. Well, then that response might be the exact withdrawal symptoms, like anxiety, sweating, muscle aches, tremors, nausea, vomiting. Maybe all of that was there to help suppress the effect of the drug, but the drug never came in. And that's why you're getting these withdrawal symptoms when the drug is not there. And it can also perhaps play a role in relapse. So think about the man, my friend's husband, stopped smoking. He hasn't smoked in a really long time. But then, then he goes to someone else's garage. And that someone else's garage just has an odor or something in there that just reminds his body, like then makes him want that drug. That CS is there without the US, and it leads to that CR, the cravings, the withdrawal. And so these cues make abstinence, stopping the drug, very, very difficult. Makes it especially difficult if a lot of your training to get rid of the drug is not in the same place where you're actually going to live. So let's say you go to a therapist's office or go to some kind of a center. You might learn to withdraw from the symptoms and get beyond that, and now you're no longer addicted to the drug anymore. But if you then move back home and you go back into your garage and you're around the same people you're around and you listen to the music you were listening to, sit on the furniture that you used to sit on when you did all this, those are a lot of CSs. And it might be really, really hard with all those cues there to not have that CR, you'll get those cravings to then get over them. So since classical condition can help account for maybe what's going on that helps to keep the drug addiction going. But remember, we still believe it's a brain disease, but these are some things that might also help it keep going. What could classical conditioning say to get rid of it? And one thing is aversion therapy. So there are pills that you can take that if you drink alcohol while you're on this drug, it will make you vomit. So I've known several people who have tried this. They take the drug, even a couple sips of alcohol, and they'll start throwing up like crazy. And knowing that they're taking the drug makes them less likely to sip the alcohol anyway. But then if they do sip the alcohol and get sick, many pairings of getting sick to the alcohol should make the alcohol less positive. It should break that addiction cycle. So alcohol becomes a CS for nausea, and they're not going to want it as much. Also, if you can use extinction. So if you can have the cues about the drug be there, the furniture, the garage, the smell, the odor of the drug, the music playing, but not have the drug there over and over and over and over and over, eventually extinction will occur. And so ideally, extinction therapy should occur where the drug is taken, but oftentimes that's not realistic because we don't know how the person might respond. And we want to make sure, like for safety's sake, sometimes it has to be at a hospital or a therapist office. There's some experimental research being done now. This is just like in the last 10 years where they're using virtual reality to try to treat drug addiction. Very exciting about how this could work because you have the positive aspects of being in a hospital where there's lots of controls if your body starts to, really go into a coma or really have a negative effect. But we could be showing virtually your house, your garage, the friends that you hung out with. We could try to make the odors there, certainly the music playing. So we're using all of those CSs, but not giving you the drug and allowing extinction to really occur, but in a safe environment. So if you go into the DTs or something, you're in a hospital and they can give you something so that won't be deadly. Okay, so that's drug addiction. We're going to talk about two other applications, and I'm just following what the book is doing. So Another thing that where classical conditioning is talked about a lot is advertising. So, of course, if you're an advertiser, you try to associate your brand with positive feelings, or you might be associating a competitor's brand with negative things, much like we did in the last video with those words. So, like the word light has positive connotations with it. How did that happen? Light, the word light must have happened, been associated with other positive things. So, that's what you're trying to do with advertising. One of the things that's interesting with advertising is remember with classical conditioning how it works better if you've got delayed conditioning, not simultaneous conditioning. So if you look at the Pepsi commercials that are using Santa, because a lot of us have really positive feelings about Santa and Christmas and all the good feelings that that brings. So what they do is you'd want to make sure that you show the Pepsi bottle before Santa. If Santa and the Pepsi bottle are shown at the same time, that's simultaneous conditioning, and we know that that doesn't work as well. So you want to show the Pepsi first and then Santa and the good feelings. Pepsi, Santa, good feelings. Pepsi, Santa, good feelings. See this commercial enough, when you look at a Pepsi, maybe you're going to have these good feelings. Okay, so the research that's on this is, of course, it must work to some extent. Look at all the money that's put into advertising, but it doesn't work well on feelings that are very strong for you. And that might just be because your feelings are so strong because you've had millions of pairings. And so a commercial, you're not going to watch the commercial enough to be able to extinguish it and to learn that to learn this new pairing. Does that kind of make sense? So, but this has been going on for the longest time. In the 1800s, there was a floor cleaner that then they realized could actually work as a medicine. I think it was a medicine for gonorrhea. And so, how were they going to convince people that this thing that they used to use as a floor cleaner, now they should actually swallow as a drug? People didn't know what to do. So they came up with this idea. There's this famous doctor in the area, Dr. Joseph Lister. Everyone really respected him, thought he was a great guy. So they put his name on the label. And now it's like we're associating this man with all these positive feelings with this drug Listerine. I know it's like Listerine today, but with this drug Listerine, and it led to enough positive associations where people would take the drug. So that's advertising. Let's now talk about healthcare, how classical conditioning has been used in the healthcare system. So one of the things that I find fascinating has to do with our immune system. Our immune system is actually susceptible to be influenced by classical conditioning. So are allergic reactions. Allergic reactions are not 100% physiological. Yes, there's definitely a physiological component, but people have been found to have severe allergic reactions to things that are associated with the thing that they're allergic to. So, and Dr. Stephanie Stern, when she teaches this class, she tells a story about a woman who was allergic to flowers. And I think it was one day she was shown a paper rose and she had a massive allergic reaction to it. Needed, what is it, the EpiPen needed to come out of this allergic reaction when there wasn't a rose there. It was a paper rose. So things that can become associated with things that we're allergic to can lead to allergic reactions. I know I get sick on planes. I didn't for years and years. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, after that, something must have changed in my hormones or my ears or something. And anytime I went on a plane after that, I would get very airsick. And so I take Dramamine so I won't get airsick. But now I think I have in my body, when I get near a plane, I feel a little tired. I feel a little Dramamined out. I think that's through classical conditioning. on so many planes now, I take the Dramamine so that I won't get sick, but the Dramamine has a side effect of making me like sleepy and foggy. So now if I get near a plane or I go to an airport and I'm picking someone up, I kind of feel a little like lethargic and foggy. So it's sort of like I'm having a physiological reaction to um, uh, to being in an airport, which makes absolutely no sense except through classical conditioning. So our immune system can be affected by classical conditioning, allergic reactions. Okay, so we have now covered what I wanted to cover in this video. Oh, that's right, one more thing, chemotherapy. So chemotherapy is great for curing cancer and it suppresses the immune system. But in time, the stimuli associated with the chemo can also suppress the immune system. So it might be that every time you go into chemo, there's a special blanket that you find comfortable, so you bring that blanket with you. When chemo is over and you get near that blanket, that just the cue of that blanket might start to suppress our immune system. Really fascinating findings. I know also with chemo, some taste aversion will occur. If you have like broccoli and then you go to chemo, broccoli and then you go to chemo, broccoli, then you go to chemo, it's not too long. It's very common then for people to like, even the sight of broccoli makes them start to feel sick. And there's some healthy foods that they no longer want in their diet as a result of the chemotherapy. So when you're going for chemotherapy, there's several things that they suggest that you do and don't do, like don't have broccoli every time, alternate because you want to avoid getting some of these responses that seem to happen through classical conditioning. Okay, we have covered classical conditioning in depth in chapter 3 and then the applications for it in chapter 4. You now have all the information you need to succeed on the 4th exam. I recommend that you do the practice test in your textbook. Sorry, I'm looking for the pages. The practice quiz in your textbook, pages 124 to 125. I think that could help you. And there'll be a review sheet that will also help you to prepare for the first exam. And if you have any questions at all, please email me at maryd@cameron.edu. All right, I'm just stopping the share and getting out. Thank you.